Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to be finding the least common denominator of two rational expressions. Before we do that, let's review how to add or subtract two fractions from 2 semesters ago. So suppose you had 4/9, comma, and then 3/12. Now we're not actually going to add or subtract these, but we're going to talk about what you need to do in order to write equivalent fractions. So when you add or subtract, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and make this 5/12. When you add or subtract two fractions, you need to make sure that these denominators are the same. So the denominators of the fractions are the same. You want to make sure they're the same before you can add or subtract two fractions. So what we did was we found the least common denominator. Least common denominator of 4/9 and 5/12, which basically was that you found the least common multiple of 9 and 12. That's basically what you found. Okay, now there are several ways you can do this. If you recall in the previous video, one of the things you can do is find the factorization of 9. So 9, remember, is 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. And then 12, remember, the prime factorization means you're going to write each composite number as a product of prime numbers. So 3 of prime, so 3 times 3 is 3 squared. 3 times 3 is 3 squared, which is 9. 12, remember, is 4 times 3. 3 is prime, and 4 is 2 times 2. And 2's are prime. So this becomes 2 times 2 times 3, which is 2 squared times 3. Okay, so the least common multiple of 9 and 12, least common multiple, that's multiple, of 9 and 12, for every factor that you see, it has to be in the least common multiple. It has to be part of the least common multiple. So for example, you see there's a factor of 2 right here. So you have a factor of 2. So there are 2 factors of 2. There are none here, so I need I need 2 factors of 2. So you got to use the largest number of factors. Okay? So for 3, for the factors of 3, I have 1 factor here, 2 factors here. So again, I need 2 of them. You got to use the one with the largest number of factors. So 3 times 3 is here, so I needed 3 times 3. There's only 1 factor of 3 here. Okay, so my LCD then is going to equal, or the least common multiple then is going to equal 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, so you get 36. So the least common multiple of 9 and 12 is 36, which means that the least common denominator of 4/9 and 5/12 will be 36. Okay, and so what you remember you did last 2 years ago was you wrote equivalent fractions, and we're going to use that idea in this lesson and the next lesson. So equivalent fractions. So if you recall, you said 4/9 was equivalent to what number over 36? And so what you did was you said 9 times what's 36? Well, 9 times 4 is 36, and what I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. So 4 times 4 is also, or is 16. So 4/9 is equivalent to 16/36. Then you do the same thing with 5/12. So 5/12 is equivalent to what fraction, or to what numerator divided by 36. So again, you did the same thing. You said 12 times 3 is 36, and what I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. So 5 times 3 is 15. So 5/12 is equivalent to 15/36. So all this is going to be used in this lesson and the next lesson. Okay, so let's do some problems where there are now variables. Okay, so let's look at this example. So basically, the directions will just say find the LCD. Find the LCD. That will be the directions. Okay, so number 1, you have 19 divided by 2x, comma, and then 5 divided by 4x cubed. Okay, so 19 divided by 2x, comma, 5 divided by 4x cubed. Okay, so the numerators don't matter here. So it doesn't matter what the numerators are. You're just interested in what's going to be the least common denominator of these two fractions. Because at some point in another lesson, you're going to have to add or subtract these two fractions. And you got to make sure that these denominators are the same. And right now they're not. So you're going to have to find the LCD. Okay, so that's your goal, is to find the LCD. Okay, so what I would do first is again, you're only interested in the denominator. So look at the coefficients first. So 2 and 4. What is the least common multiple of 2 and 4? Well, the least common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4. Okay, so 4. And always use the least common denominator. Don't use just any common multiple. Don't use a common multiple. For example, 8. 8 would be a common multiple, but it's not the least. Always use the least. It doesn't. Now, if you did not use the least when you add or subtract, it's not going to matter because at some point you're going to reduce. But the direction says find the LCD. So it must be the least common multiple. So the least common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4 because 2 goes into 4 evenly and 4 goes into 4 evenly. Common mistake people make is that they want to say the least common multiple is 2. Okay, 2. Well, 2 is the GCF, the greatest common factor. Okay, so the greatest common factor and the least common multiple are not the same thing. Okay. All right, now your variables. You have x's in both of those. Okay, so remember what we talked about over here. So in your least common multiple, you see how we looked at the factors of 2? And there were 2 factors, and there were none here. You had to use the one with the largest exponent, okay, the one that occurred the most often. So that's why you saw 2 factors of 2 right here. Over here, there's 1 factor of 3, 2 factors of 3. I need the one with the largest exponent. So I needed 2 factors of 3. So the same idea here. There's 1 factor of x, 3 factors of x, your exponent. 3 factors of x. So I need 3 factors of x, the largest exponent. So there's your LCD. So in another lesson, you're going to write equivalent fractions with this LCD. All right, number 2. Okay, suppose you had, let's see, suppose you had 9 divided by 8x, comma, and then 3 divided by 2x plus 4. Okay, so here we go. Listen carefully. You see, and when we did number 1, those were monomials, and we talked about monomials before in previous lessons. This is a monomial. This is a binomial. Now, these are all polynomials. Remember, polynomial is, and I'm talking about the denominator. So the denominator is a polynomial, 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 polynomial. A polynomial is is where you have one or more monomials. Okay, so so here you want to make where you have the 2x plus 4. Before you find the least common denominator, you want to make sure it's factored. So that's why in a previous chapter you learned all about factoring, because all of this can be needed here. So this right here becomes 2 times x plus 2. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 2 is 4. So in finding the LCD, just make sure, just remember, when finding the LCD, I'm put a little asterisk here, make sure that you factor the denominators. Factor the denominators when finding the LCD. All right, now look at your factors. Now you got to know what your factors are. My factors are. It's important that you know them. Your factors are 8, x, and over here it's 2, and then x plus 2. Those are your factors. Okay, so 8, x, 2, and x plus 2. Okay, now let me make a little note here. So this little forward slash separates the factors from the first fraction denominator and the factors from the second denominator. Okay, All right, just like we did here, look at the coefficients first. This is a 2, this is a 4. We said the LCD was 4. Over here, your coefficient is an 8. This coefficient is a 2. See, 8, 2. Always look at the numbers first. 8 and 2. So the LCD of 8 and 2 is 8. 8. 2 goes into 8 evenly, and 8 goes into itself evenly. Okay? All right, now, let's look at the next factor of this first denominator. Have an x here as a factor. I don't have any x here as a factor. And I only have one factor here of x, so I'm going to need x in my LCD. All right, so if it occurs as a factor in any of these denominators, if it occurs as a factor in any of the denominators, you're going to need it in your LCD. Okay? All right, then we already took care of the 2. That was part of this 8 right here. Now your next factor is x plus 2. I don't see any occurring here. There's only one occurring here, so I need one of them. Okay, so that's the least. All right, so my LCD is 8x times x plus 2. 8x times x plus 2. All right, number 3. Suppose we had 2 divided by x plus 3, comma, 5 divided by x minus 2. All right, so my denominator is already factored. I can't do anything else to it. Okay, but remember, think about what your factors are. My factors are x plus 3 and x minus 2. So in my first denominator, I have a factor of x plus 3. And there's only one factor, none here. I need 1. Okay, so far my LCD is x plus 3. So there's just one factor. My next denominator, my next factor is x minus 2. There's none here. There's one factor here. I need 1. So your LCD is x plus 3 times x minus 2. Again, that's going to be important in another section when we start adding and subtracting these rational expressions. Number 4. Let's suppose we had x divided by x plus 6, comma, 10 divided by 3x plus 18. All right, so again, we gotta make sure that you factor the denominators. So x plus 6, I can't do anything else to it. 3x plus 18, I can factor. The GCF of 3x plus 18 is 3. So when I factor out of 3, I'm left with 3 times x plus 6. Now again, think of your factors. My factors are x plus 6, 3, and x plus 6. So let's start with that first one. Let's start with that first denominator. I have an x plus 6 occurring as a factor here. There's only one factor. There's only one factor here, so you only need 1. So far, my LCD is x plus 6. Now, if this was, let's say, x plus 6 squared, again, if that was a squared, you'd say I have 1 here, 2 factors here, so I need 2. Remember, you always use the one with the most factors. Okay, now so that takes care of x plus 6. Now let's go to the coefficient 3. So 3 occurs as a factor here once. 3 does not occur anywhere here, so I need 1. So I'll put the coefficient out in front. So I get 3 times x plus 6, and leave it in factored form. Don't distribute. Whenever you write equivalent fractions later on, it's going to be important that you leave them in factored form. Leave in factored form. That's going to be important when you write equivalent fractions. So leave them as they are. All right, number 5. Let's suppose we had 8x squared divided by x minus 6 squared, comma, 13x divided by 5x minus 30. All right, so again, x minus 6, I can't do anything else to it. It's already factored. Here, though, this polynomial is not factored, but the GCF of 5x minus 30 is 5, so you factor out of 5. So when you factor out of 5, you're left with 5 times x minus 6. Okay. All right, now let's look at the coefficients first. So let's start with that one. This coefficient's a 1. This is a 5. So the LCD of 1 and 5 is 5. All right, now let's look at the factors. I have a factor of x minus 6 here. In fact, there are 2 of them. I have a factor of x minus 6 here. There's only 1 of them. I need 2 of them. So it'll be 5 times x minus 6 squared. So there's your LCD. All right, number 6. Suppose you had 1 divided by 3x plus 3, comma, 7 divided by 2x squared plus 4x plus 2. All right, so 1 divided by x plus 3x plus 3, and then 7 divided by 2x squared plus 4x plus 2. All right, so factor the denominators. So here I can factor out a 3, and I'm left with 3 times x plus 1. Here, make sure you do this, you factor out a 2, and you're left with x squared plus 2x plus 1. And remember, just as you did in a previous lesson, you want to see if you can factor this trinomial, and you can. So this becomes 2 times, don't forget to bring down the GCF, this becomes 2 times x plus 1 times x plus 1. Okay? All right, so let's do the coefficients first. This is a 3, this is a 2, the least common denominator. So the least common multiple of 3 and 2 is 6. So 3 goes into 6 evenly, 2 goes into 6 evenly. So there's your least common multiple of 3 and 2 is 6. So far my least common denominator is 6. Here, my factor is x plus 1. There's only one factor of x plus 1 here. There are 2 here, 1 and 1. So there are 2. So I need 2 of them, x plus 1 squared. All right, so that was number 6. All right, let's look at number 7. All right, so number 7, you have, let's say, 2. Let's do this one. 1 divided by x squared minus 16, comma, x plus 6 divided by 2x cubed minus 8x squared. Okay, so first of all, you're going to factor the denominators. So this is the difference of 2 squares. So it becomes x minus 4, x plus 4. Over here, the GCF here will be 2x squared. So 2x squared. And when you factor out the 2x squared, you're left with x minus 4. 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times a negative 4 is a negative 8x squared. All right, let's find the GCF. I'm sorry, the least common denominator. So the least common denominator, let's start with the coefficient 2. This is a 1, this is a 2. So far my least common denominator will contain a 2. Then look at the x squared. Let's continue with the monomial parts first. The x squared. There are 2 factors of x here. There are none here. So I need 2. And we always use the one with the largest amount of factors. Okay, now let's go here. X minus 4. There's 1 factor of x minus 4 here. There's 1 factor of x minus 4 here. So I need 1 of them. X plus 4. There's a factor of x plus 4 here. There is none here, but remember you need one with the largest amount of factors. So you need 1 factor of x plus 4 in your LCD. And so there's your LCD. So your LCD is 2x squared times x minus 4 times x plus 4. Okay, so that's going to take care of this lesson, how to find the LCD of 2 rational expressions.